Hey everybody, welcome to Bible Study That Doesn't Suck. And we don't want to start by saying we're always tired, so something else. I'm Pastor Megan, and I'm at Grace Lutheran in San Francisco, and our worship is every Sunday at 10:30 a.m. and you can come in person or you can watch it on live stream at www.gracesf.com. We have a million, hundred trillion Lenten events that are happening. So many that I'm really excited about. And we're doing lots of fun like gardening projects and painting and fixing up around the church so that when you show up, if you do, it's going to look great. So come on down. Something Big Bob, Bargain Barn, Grace Lutheran Church. I felt like I moved into like car salesman ad. Sorry about that. All right. Pastor Amanda.
Hello, everyone. I'm Pastor Amanda Zenzalo. I serve at Central Lutheran Church in downtown Northeast Portland, Oregon, where you can come and join us for worship on Sunday mornings at 10:15 a.m. You can join us here in the building, or you can join us live online at centralportland.org. We have our first Wednesday evening event for Lent this evening at 5:30. That runs throughout the Lenten season, which runs until the end of March. You can join us for dinner at 5:30. Then we're going to talk about the small catechism starting at 6:15, and then we're going to hold an evening prayer at 7.
I mean, that sounds fun. Sorry.
Hey, I actually think it's going to be a great time.
You think the catechism is fun? Good.
Yeah, we did a new podcast. Central has a new podcast that we're doing, The Church Basement. And last week we recorded it on the Small Catechism. So if you want to know what the heck I'm just talking about, we're going to put a link right down here for you so you can check out that podcast and hear what the Small Catechism is and why it can actually still have something to say to us today.
Yeah,
so
and
there we go.
Here at Grace, we're working on a series of reconciling and diverse books that are kind of in the vein of Bible Study That Doesn't Suck, but for toddlers and kids. The first one is 6 pages long because it's designed to go on thick pages like this, and it's for children attention spans, is up on Amazon, and I'll put a link down here. And once we get the whole order printing thing worked out, the in-person versions probably arrive in 5 to 6 weeks or so. The end. Buy things. Dun, da, da, da. But wait, there's more. It's Bible study.
That doesn't suck.
Yeah. Well, I can't guarantee anything today. So, Genesis is one of our first readings that'll happen on Sunday. Most people only think of Genesis. They think of the creation stories. This reading is about Abram. Abram and Abraham are the same person. At some point in the story, God renames Abraham and he becomes Abraham, but before that, he's Abram. And that's something that happens to a lot of faithful people throughout the Bible, is that when you have an interaction with God, you are changed, and so you get a new name. So what you need to know to understand this Bible story is that the understanding of how people worked was different. And if I wasn't a transgender person, or we didn't have awareness of transgender people, we would think that this understanding, this ancient understanding, is really sexist. And it is, right? It's bad feminism. We still believe in feminism. We still believe that women are important and vital, regardless of whether or not they can have babies. And for the purpose of this Bible study, and for the purpose of thinking about trans issues or different kinds of gender, or welcoming people who might not have felt like they were welcome, we're going to go with this idea of what ancient people were believing, just to see how that might enlighten what we're thinking about the Bible. Not because we believe it's true fully for the feminist reasons that they believed it, but because something interesting might happen if you stick with me to the end. Okay, so, right, we still believe in feminism, but in the oldie times of the Bible, they believed that there were 4 genders. Some people in bathrooms think there's people who wear pants and people who wear skirts, right? In South Dakota, they just passed a law about bathroom use today. I'm frustrated about it. I grew up in South Dakota. I don't know where I'm going to go to the bathroom when I visit my family now. But in the Bible, they had 4 genders. So here's where the feminism part comes in. They believed there were women who could have babies and women who couldn't have babies. Men who could make babies, men who couldn't make babies. 4 different genders. They had a value system placed on that. We're not going to place that same value system on that because we're feminists and we learned all those lessons, right? But what you need to know is that there's 4 genders. So when in the book of Genesis, there are 7 different times when someone moves from someone who can have a baby to someone who cannot have a baby, God has given them a divine sex change. And we know that ancient people believed that there was a divine sex change because they write a lot about it. One of the most famous stories in the book of Genesis is a child when Leah was pregnant. Remember, they are having the sons of Israel, and there need to be 12. And Leah already had some sons, and one of her sisters, or one of the sister wives, I don't remember if they were sisters or sister wives, hadn't had a son yet and wanted to have a baby and wanted to be a part of the 12 tribes of Israel. And so Leah prays in her tummy, or they're not sure if Leah prays while the baby's in her tummy or after the baby's already born. Leah prays that the girl baby will become a boy baby. And there's ancient prayers about it. And ancient rabbis believed that Leah's baby switches from a girl to a boy, either inside Leah's, from a boy to a girl, right? Because they wanted to save that last 12 sons of Israel slot for one more thing. So the boy baby, either in the mama's womb or after it's born, switches, and that baby becomes Dinah. Dinah becomes the mother of Benjamin. That's how you know that sex change was really, really good, is when the boy baby can have a baby at the end of it, right? So it's not just something that's between people who are able to have babies and people who aren't able to have babies. We have at least one story, the story of Leah's child, Dinah, or Benjamin's mommy, switching from here to over here, instead of just between these two. But so anytime you read one of these stories where miraculously you can have a baby and you couldn't have a baby, then just notice that a sex change is happening. You don't have to choose to believe that it's a transgender thing if you're not down with all of that, but just notice that God is changing bodies and changing the way that we're able to reproduce. In the way that current medical science still hasn't been able to figure out yet. So something godly, mystical, miraculous is happening, because even if it was a fertility issue, we don't know how to make a 98-year-old woman have a baby, which is, Sarah was super darn old. So old. How old was she? Super old. Like old, so old you just knew that even if she could have had a baby when she was younger, it was just dust in there. I know that's mean, but she's a Bible person, right? So this is one of those moments. If you want to take it to the full understanding of kind of contemporary trans issues, you can think about that beginning in the book of Genesis, where this being that the original Hebrew rabbis believed had both male and female characteristics. Remember, Adam doesn't become Adam until he is cut with surgery and a part of his body is removed. The part of Adam's body that is removed becomes a girl. And then after this surgery, Adam is declared a boy, right? And so whatever that first human being was that God created had some bits that when you removed it became a girl and made Adam. Adam is just a fancy word in the Hebrew for earth. It just meant like, I made this out of clay. Yay, mud. So there's lots of trans stuff that's happening in this scripture. Most pastors probably won't make that what they're talking about. It's much more fun to think about life coming in the deepest darkness, or birth happening when we least expect it. I would much I don't know about you, but sometimes I watch the Hallmark Channel, or if you might even like not even want to watch it, but the story of the people who tried forever to have a baby, like even in Sex and the City, right? And they go and they adopt a baby, and then as soon as they adopt a baby, poof, they're able to have their own baby, and it's a miracle because they're not worried about it, or who knows why, but it happens. And so we love stories when babies are able to be born when we don't expect babies to be able to be born. The thing that we have to remember, some people aren't ready to hear transness in God's creation story. Some people have trauma in their wanting to have babies and not getting the miracle they prayed for to be able to have a baby. Some people have had abortions in their life and they have mixed feelings about it. They might feel bad because they're glad they did it. They might feel bad their whole lives about it, right? So there's a lot of people on different spectrums about that. And there might be people in the congregation who have had inappropriate sexual relationships. We know that 1 in every 4 women has had inappropriate sexual touching or violence happen to them. And so this idea that a force outside of you changes your body without asking your permission, right? Because this is a story where God's only talking to the men, and then poof, the women become pregnant, can be really triggering in a lot of different ways for people. So if you focus only on happy, clappy, yay, babies are born, there's a lot of people in the congregation who are going to feel like the fullness of themselves is left out. If you focus only on the horrible traumas that happen in people's wombs or to their sexuality, you're a bad pastor if there's little kids in the room, right? Because it's weird. And so trying to find a good balance to talk about the full complexity of birthing and gender and sexuality and feminism, it's really, really tough in a 10 to 20 minute sermon, depending upon how much the guy in the back with the timer lets you talk. So just know that it's a really complex story, but this is supposed to be good news. The good news is supposed to be that God supports those who are faithful and will help them populate, because populating meant that they weren't being conquered. So every time a bigger, more brutal war country came and tried to kill them all, anytime they could reproduce, they didn't lose the war entirely, right? So I don't know. It's a big messy ball of yarn, and good luck preaching on it, but there's lots of beautiful stuff that you can think about in your private prayer life or your private Bible study or in your contemplation about how God loves our contemporary diversity. And if you are someone who is struggling with a child or someone in your life who is trans and suicide stuff going on, I've had a lot of people contact me about this week. The more you can lift up, even just say, I wonder if something trans is going on and God's a part of it, it will change people's lives. It will change people's lives to hear a story of good news for whatever is hard for them in their life. And so may there be more good news in the world. That's what I have to say about Genesis. Okay, Pastor Amanda, go.
I think you covered that one a lot. I'd like to talk for a moment about Psalm 27.
What?
Because it's a beautiful psalm and it's one of my favorites. And actually, one of the reasons why it is one of my favorites is because Jennifer Knapp wrote a song to it. Yeah, Jennifer Knapp's pretty awesome. And the song that she wrote is called Peace. We should put a link down here for you so you can find that and enjoy that song. And it was one of the core songs for me when I was first coming to faith and first learning about God, and this whole idea of God being a light and a shelter in a storm and safety and protection. And the image that she uses of leaning against God's throne and finding safety in that was probably the reason why the whole idea of God being a king and God being a ruler or a queen or whatever divine kind of person in charge you want to see God as that was not hard for me to accept as I
Right.
started to study the Christian faith, because this song had given me an image of that being a way of creating a safe space and a space of protection. So this psalm can be a way of this song of this psalm can be a way of
Oh,
entering into it that offers hope. So if you've had a difficulty with the whole imagery of God as ruler being one of comfort, I commend this song to you. Perhaps you can find a way into entering into that in a positive way. When I met her, because I met her and it was a really big, exciting day in my life.
hmm.
Um, when I met Jennifer Knapp, she came here to Portland and she played at the White Eagle, and I got to go and I hung around for a really long time and talked to her afterwards. Um, I mentioned that this was my favorite song, and she said it's one of the hardest that she's ever written, and it's a really hard one to play. So it's a beautiful song from kind of way back when she was first starting, and it's great to have her back on the scene and great to have her back out touring and giving us her music again. Um, but I really recommend that song, and I believe that this is the song that it is based on.
And she sings pretty.
And she sings fantastic.
Yeah.
She's great, and she plays guitar pretty. And she's
Yeah.
fantastic live. If you ever get a chance to see her live, she's very good. She's very good live.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm multitasking and it's bad news. I'm trying to look up Jennifer Knapp because I don't want to say something about her if it's not true.
Aha. Well, she disappeared for a long time from the Christian music scene because she went to Australia and fell in love with an amazing woman.
Yeah.
And then
I just wasn't sure if that was public knowledge, and I didn't want to say it out loud if I couldn't Google it.
That is public knowledge.
Yeah.
And she came out. She came back to the United States about 2 or 3 years ago and came out and went on Larry King Live and did all sorts of things to kind of speak to having been a part of the Christian music scene and a huge part of the Christian music scene back at the this is going to sound funny, back at the turn of the century.
Back when I was in high school.
So in 2000, she was really, meteoric success in the Christian music scene.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden she just disappeared for like a decade. And she was wrestling with her own experience and wrestling with her own theology and wrestling with the community. And her partner seems to be an awesome and amazing person.
Yeah.
And it was an honor to like say hello to them. I totally fangirled.
Yeah.
Totally fangirled, which was expected because Jennifer Knapp has been really huge in my own prayer life. Probably her music has been more central to my own personal prayer life than most hymns.
Yeah.
Because I learned her music before I learned a lot of traditional hymns. And so it was a big deal to get to meet her. And so this particular song that I'm speaking of, that is my version of Beautiful Savior. Right?
Yeah.
It's my version of How Great Thou Art. That song that when I hear the first notes of, my whole being just kind of goes,
yes. It's a good song.
So, and falls into it. So love that one. Recommend it. It's a good psalm with a good song inspired by it. Yeah. So I wanted to mention it. So there you go.
The Luke reading this week can also be one of these signs of freedom coming out, or you can read it as really depressing and boring and dumb. Like, this is for the reason it's in Lent is because Jesus is saying, no, I have to get killed, and I have to get killed for good reason. And I think that's hooey. But I get it, blah, blah, blah. I benefited from something I didn't agree with. So I like to ignore that part about I have to die. But there's a very interesting part at the end here. Like, if you wanted to go full circle and say we're not throwing out feminism because even Jesus was a feminist, then this metaphor of Jesus being a mother hen is a great metaphor. And so for anyone who's looking for imagery about the femininity of God. This metaphor of Jesus being a mother hen was used for centuries. And there was actually a group of monks, of men who lived in community with each other. And they used the idea that Jesus shared knowledge in the way that a mother breastfed as their way of talking about how spirituality and what the kingdom of God is like in a post-Christ world. And there's a beautiful book called Jesus as Mother, and I'll put a link to it. And it talks all about this history of people who took this idea of Jesus as a mother hen, and it became a really central part of their theology. This thinking of Jesus as a gentle person who doesn't respond to violence, Jesus as someone who isn't afraid of taking on femininity. And they don't negate Jesus's maleness, so it's not a full transgender story, but just that it's okay to be feminine, it's okay to be sensitive, it's okay to be loving, it's okay to have children, right? All of these things, like in Christmas when I was saying, we never see pictures of Joseph holding the baby. I want to see Joseph holding the baby. But this idea of Jesus being feminine and not giving a crap who noticed. So that's what I like from this part. So if you skip every verse except for the part about the mother hen chicken part, then I like it. But I don't really have much more to say about Luke than that, because the rest is all bleh, Lent, Jesus is going to die, notice it.
I'm totally going to respond to this because I have something to say, and I'm getting an update on somebody in the hospital. So I'm going to respond to this, and then I'm going to be right with you.
That's
This is what
Lent too.
pastors do.
That's appropriate.
This is what we do. This is life. So I think this particular Luke text is really bizarre and interesting, and if you want to find some metaphors, man, this reading in these like 4 verses just keeps throwing them at you constantly. So we get Herod as a fox, and what is the fox? This whole 3-day thing that Jesus has going on. Then we've got Jerusalem as a city that kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to it. Not a metaphor, statement about Jerusalem that can be researched to find out, what is that referencing. And then you get the mother hen and gathering the chicks under the wings. And then there's the metaphor of the house. And so like every single verse is just filled with another metaphor. So it's hefty and hard to sift through and hard to understand this passage. Last night in conversations with some folks heard in the first part, the part that Megan was saying that they really don't like about I'm gonna die and all that kind of stuff. What they heard was I've got work to do, and I'm going to keep doing it. And I know that you're going to threaten me, and I know that you're going to be angry that I'm doing it, but I have work to do, and I'm going to do it. So get out of my way. And that's really an interesting kind of piece to take from that. Just this kind of, I hear that you are angry and not cool with what I do, but I'm just going to keep on doing it.
I just still hope that people choose safety over harm.
I
That's
agree
my
with
longing for the whole world.
I hear you, and I agree with you. And I think that if what you're hearing from this is do your work, that if that's inspirational for you, then that's okay too. Not in such a way that you're necessarily going to get harmed by it, but if you have someone who's doing something, for example, in the Black Lives Matter movement, and they're feeling the call to do it, then it's not for us to say that you can't go do it, even though it's going to make people
I'm
angry.
not a good example. I advocate and people say dumb things all the time, and I've protested and gotten arrested. Like, I'm just saying I want other people to choose safety.
Right, which
over harm.
People who are passionate are going to do what they're going to do, and there's work to be done.
Yeah.
And so when there's work to be done, even if people are getting angry at you, then there's work to be done. And so you do the work. And I think that hearing that out of the first 3 verses is not a bad thing to hear, to do the work. And other folks last night heard this, just absolutely, this idea of what it is to try to gather people underneath your wings and try to hold them safe and want to keep people safe and to have them keep running out from underneath your wings. Um, I expressed that I felt like another one of the chicks, like trying to get other chicks underneath the wings and getting frustrated because they're like zipping out the back or like running. I'm just okay, then I'll take
That
you in the
just
back,
means
and
you're
then
the
you're running out the
hen.
front.
You're the hen.
No, I'm not the hen. I ain't ever gonna be that. I'm not the shepherd, and I'm not the hen.
Okay, you're the mama
So,
lion or bear.
so I get that feeling of, there's a beautiful amount of sadness that Jesus is expressing here, the grief of not being able to stop people from being in positions of harm, being in positions that are going to bring consequences that they're not going to enjoy, and the grief that comes with that. So I think that that's easy to identify with in this passage as well. And so we've got lots of different things going on in this passage. How to preach on this when it's so diverse? I mean, there's like 5 sermons. There's like a sermon in every single line in there.
I'll
And
tell you how I'm going to preach on it, by scuba diving and not being today. Pulpit supply.
yeah,
That's how you preach on it.
pulpit supply. Yeah, I'll be in church on Sunday. You can watch whatever it is that I come up with live online, and you can laugh at me. Turn it into a drinking game. Every time I say the word
What?
take a shot. I don't know.
What? Did you just say that your sermon is a drinking game?
I just said that
What
the
time is
sermon
your
this
church
weekend.
service again?
Well, I'm assuming that people who are watching the live stream don't actually watch the live stream and watch it later at their convenience because they really just want to sleep in on Sunday morning.
All right. Cracking me up, Pastor Amanda. We must be drunk with tiredness of Lent.
Or something.
Or
Or with
something.
eagerness to head towards our Wednesday evening services. We'll call it
All
that.
right.
We'll call it
Well,
that.
those of you who are out there and in need of Lenten blessings to you. If you would like prayers, you can email Pastor Amanda or myself or both of us. And Pastor Amanda, we send our well wishes with you as you go to the hospital.
Thank you very much.
Choose safety,
Thank you,
y'all.
everyone. Bye.
Bye.